She was supposed to be nothing more than his escape plan, a convenient stranger he'd pay to pose as his girlfriend to avoid his family's matchmaking. But as Alexander Reed watched Sarah Chen sleeping peacefully beside him in the early morning light, her dark hair splayed across his pillow, he realized with startling clarity that somewhere along the way, this woman he'd hired had become the one person he couldn't live without. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected love and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional journeys that will touch your heart. Alexander had built an empire worth billions, but he'd never learned how to build a life worth living, until Ellie showed him what truly mattered couldn't be bought. Their story begins with a desperate plan and ends with the most valuable discovery of all. Alexander Reed drummed his fingers against the polished mahogany of his desk, staring at the invitation that had arrived that morning. Another charity gala hosted by his mother, Eleanor Reed, the perfect hunting ground for eligible socialites and their ambitious mothers. At 35, he was the most sought-after bachelor in New York, not for his striking good looks or his Harvard education, but for the 11-figure net worth attached to his name. His mother's latest text message glowed on his phone screen: "Darling, the Winthrops will be attending tonight. Their daughter Camille just returned from Paris. You remember her, don't you? Lovely girl. Perfect breeding." Alexander scoffed. Perfect breeding. As if he were a thoroughbred horse in need of an appropriate mare. He loosened his tie, feeling the familiar suffocation that came with his mother's matchmaking attempts. Ever since his father's death 2 years ago, Eleanor Reed had made it her mission to see her son properly settled before his 40th birthday. The Reed family legacy demanded an appropriate wife, preferably from one of the old money families his mother deemed acceptable. The problem was, Alexander had seen too many of those marriages, including his parents, to believe in them. Polite conversations over breakfast, separate bedrooms, affairs conducted with discretion, and a mutual understanding that love had nothing to do with matrimony. "Mr. Reed?" His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your 3 o'clock is here." Alexander straightened his tie. "Send her in." The door opened, and a young woman walked in. She wasn't what he expected. The agency had promised someone who could pass as a socialite, someone polished and sophisticated. This woman looked ordinary. Pretty, certainly, but not in the manufactured way of the women his mother introduced him to. She wore a simple navy dress that hugged her curves modestly, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No excessive jewelry, minimal makeup. "Mr. Reed," she extended her hand. "I'm Sarah Chen. Discretion Services sent me." Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct. No batting eyelashes, no coy smiles. "Please, sit down," he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I was expecting someone more glamorous." She smiled slightly. "That's precisely why I'm good at what I do. I blend in. I don't draw attention. I can be whoever you need me to be without seeming like I'm trying too hard." Alexander studied her. There was an intelligence in her eyes that intrigued him. "And what exactly do you think I need you to be, Miss Chen? According to your contract with the agency, you need a girlfriend. Someone to convince your family you're in a serious relationship so they'll stop trying to marry you off to socially appropriate women." She crossed her legs, completely at ease. "I'm to accompany you to events, be charming but not overly so, and create the impression of a woman you might actually fall in love with rather than someone who's obviously after your money." Alexander leaned back in his chair. "And you think you can pull that off?" "I've been doing this for 3 years, Mr. Reed. I've posed as girlfriends, fiancées, even wives for men who needed to present a certain image. I've never been caught. I'm professional, discreet, and I do my research." She pulled out a small notebook. "For instance, I know you prefer coffee black in the morning but switch to espresso after noon. You donate anonymously to children's hospitals because your younger brother died of leukemia when you were 12. You collect first editions but tell people it's an investment when really, you just love the smell of old books." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. How did you? It's my job to know who I'm pretending to love, she said simply. The more authentic details I know, the more convincing our relationship will be. For the first time in years, Alexander felt off balance. This woman had researched him thoroughly, not just the public information but the private details he rarely shared. The gala is tonight, he said, regaining his composure. Do you have something appropriate to wear? The agency provides a wardrobe allowance. I'll find something suitable. She closed her notebook. Is there anything specific you want people to know about how we met? Alexander hadn't thought that far ahead. Something believable. Not too romantic. We met at a bookstore, she suggested. You were looking for a first edition Hemingway. I was the one who helped you find it. Not love at first sight, but a shared interest that grew into something more. It was perfect, simple, believable, and close enough to his actual interests that he could discuss it naturally. That works, he nodded. The car will pick you up at 7. She stood, smoothing her dress. One more thing, Mr. Reed. Physical boundaries. What are you comfortable with? Alexander hadn't considered this either. Hand-holding is fine. A kiss on the cheek if necessary. And if your mother is particularly persistent? Sometimes a more convincing display is needed. He frowned. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. Ellie nodded. I'll see you tonight, then. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Mr. Reed? You might want to look at me the way you just did when we're in public. That mixture of wariness and fascination. It's exactly how someone would look at a woman they're falling for against their better judgment. With that, she was gone, leaving Alexander staring at the closed door, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. The Reed family estate in the Hamptons was lit up like a Christmas tree, cars lining the circular driveway as New York's elite arrived for Eleanor Reed's annual charity gala. Alexander sat in the back of his Bentley, adjusting his cufflinks nervously. Relax, Ellie said beside him. You look like you're heading to your execution. Alexander glanced at her, and for a moment, he forgot to breathe. The simple woman from his office had transformed. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and she wore a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves before flowing elegantly to the floor. A single diamond pendant, tasteful, not ostentatious, hung at her throat. You look. He searched for the right word. Appropriate, she suggested with a small smile. Beautiful, he corrected. You clean up well, Miss Chen. Ellie, she reminded him. And thank you. You're not so bad yourself. The car stopped, and Alexander took a deep breath. Ready to meet the dragons? I've faced worse, she said, taking his offered hand as they exited the car. The moment they entered the grand ballroom, Alexander felt his mother's radar lock onto them. Eleanor Reed, still striking at 65, excused herself from a conversation and made her way toward them with the determination of a heat-seeking missile. Alexander, darling, she air-kissed both his cheeks. I was beginning to think you weren't coming. Her gaze shifted to Ellie, assessing her from head to toe in one swift glance. And who is this? Alexander placed his hand on the small of Ellie's back, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. Mother, this is Ellie Chen. Ellie, my mother, Eleanor Reed. Ellie extended her hand with just the right amount of deference. Mrs. Reed, it's a pleasure to meet you. Your home is absolutely stunning. Eleanor took Ellie's hand, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Thank you, dear. And how do you know my son? Before Alexander could answer, Ellie laughed softly. He was very persistent. After he came back to the bookshop 3 times in 1 week, I finally agreed to have coffee with him. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. A bookshop? Ellie helped me find a first edition Hemingway I'd been searching for, Alexander explained, impressed by how easily Ellie had taken control of the conversation. She knows more about literature than anyone I've ever met. How quaint, Eleanor said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. And what do you do, Ms. Chen, when you're not helping billionaires find books? Alexander tensed, realizing they hadn't discussed Ellie's backstory in detail. I'm finishing my PhD in art history at Columbia, Ellie replied smoothly. My focus is on Renaissance portraiture and its influence on modern identity construction. Fascinating subject, though I'm sure it sounds terribly dry to most people. Eleanor blinked, clearly not expecting such an educated response. Not at all. The Reeds have always appreciated fine art. In fact, we have several Renaissance pieces in our collection. Yes, I noticed the Botticelli in the foyer, Ellie said. A stunning example of his later work. Alexander stared at her, genuinely impressed. Either she'd done even more research than he realized, or she actually did know about art history. Well, Eleanor said, slightly flustered, I should greet the other guests. Alexander, the Winthrops were asking about you. They're by the East Terrace. We'll find them later, Mother, Alexander said firmly. I'd like to introduce Ellie to some of my friends first. As Eleanor walked away, Alexander leaned close to Ellie's ear. Art history? I actually do have a master's in it, she whispered back. The PhD part is a stretch, but I know enough to be convincing. The Botticelli? Google Maps Street View of your mother's house. I saw it through the window and researched it before coming. Alexander shook his head in amazement. You're good. I told you, she smiled, taking a champagne flute from a passing waiter. Now, shall we mingle? Your mother is watching us from across the room, and the Winthrops are heading this way. For the next 2 hours, Alexander watched in awe as Ellie charmed everyone they encountered. She discussed politics with a senator, debated the merits of different investment strategies with a hedge fund manager, and even made his childhood friend James laugh, something James's actual girlfriend had never managed to do. Most impressively, she deflected Camille Winthrop's thinly veiled insults with such grace that Camille ended up looking petty rather than sophisticated. She's not what I expected, James said when the women excused themselves to the powder room. Not your usual type. Alexander sipped his scotch. What's my usual type? Blonde, vapid, and gone within a month, James laughed. This one's different. She actually seems to like you for you, not your bank account. Alexander watched Ellie across the room, chatting easily with an elderly trustee of the Metropolitan Museum. She caught his eye and smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one she'd been giving everyone else. Something shifted in his chest. Yeah, he said quietly. She is different. Later, as they danced, Ellie fit perfectly in his arms, moving with him as if they'd danced together 100 times before. Your mother is still watching us, she murmured. She's not convinced. Alexander glanced over to see Eleanor indeed observing them with narrowed eyes. What do you suggest? Look at me like I'm the only woman in the room, Ellie instructed. Like you can't believe your luck. Alexander looked down at her, prepared to act, but found he didn't need to. With her eyes reflecting the chandelier light, her lips curved in a soft smile, she was breathtaking. Acting wasn't necessary. Perfect, she whispered. Now, lean down slowly and kiss me. Just once, very gently. Alexander hesitated. We agreed. Your mother just pointed us out to that woman in the red dress. I'm guessing that's another potential match she had in mind for you. He sighed and leaned down, intending a brief, perfunctory kiss. But when his lips touched hers, something unexpected happened. Ellie's lips were soft, yielding, and she made a small sound in the back of her throat that sent heat coursing through him. What was meant to be a quick peck lingered, deepened, until Alexander forgot they were in a crowded ballroom, forgot this was all pretend. When they finally broke apart, Ellie's eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed. That was convincing, he finished for her, his voice rough. She nodded, looking away. Yes. Convincing. For the rest of the evening, Alexander found himself hyper-aware of Ellie, the scent of her perfume, the sound of her laugh, the way her hand felt in his. By the time they left, he was confused and irritated with himself. This was business, not pleasure. He was paying her to play a role, nothing more. In the car, Ellie was quiet, staring out the window at the passing lights. "You were impressive tonight," he finally said. "Everyone loved you." "Everyone except your mother," Ellie replied. "She saw right through me." Alexander frowned. "What do you mean?" "You were perfect." "I was too perfect," Ellie sighed. "I knew too much, said all the right things. A real girlfriend would have made mistakes, wouldn't have known exactly how to handle every situation." She turned to look at him. "If we're going to convince her, we need to be more authentic." "How do we do that?" "We need to spend more time together. In public. Create a history people can see." She pulled out her phone. "There's a gallery opening next week. We should be photographed there. And you should take me to dinner at places you actually like, not just the expensive restaurants you think would impress a date." Alexander considered this. More time with Ellie wasn't exactly a hardship. "All right. I'll have my assistant coordinate with you." "No," Ellie shook her head. "Your assistant can't know this isn't real. The fewer people who know, the better. You need to contact me directly." She handed him a card with her personal number. As the car pulled up to her apartment building, a modest place in Brooklyn, not what he expected, Alexander found himself reluctant to let her go. "Thank you for tonight," he said. "You were remarkable." Ellie smiled, and for a moment, he thought he saw something genuine in her eyes. "Good night, Alexander." He watched her walk into her building, wondering why his chest felt tight. It was just business, he reminded himself. Just a transaction. But as he headed back to his empty penthouse, Alexander couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally changed tonight, and it terrified him. Over the next few weeks, Alexander and Ellie were seen everywhere together. They attended gallery openings, charity events, and intimate dinners. They were photographed walking through Central Park, laughing at a jazz club, browsing at a bookstore. Each outing was carefully planned to build their cover story, but something unexpected was happening. Alexander was enjoying himself. Ellie wasn't like the women he usually dated. She challenged him, argued with him, made him defend his opinions. She didn't care about his money or his status. When he tried to impress her by taking her to an exclusive restaurant, she wrinkled her nose at the tiny portions and afterward dragged him to a hole-in-the-wall dumpling place where they ate the best food he'd ever tasted. "See," she said, watching him devour his third order of soup dumplings. "Money doesn't always buy the best experiences. My mother would have a heart attack if she saw me eating here," he laughed. "Your mother needs to lighten up," Ellie replied, then immediately looked contrite. "I'm sorry. That was unprofessional." "No, you're right," Alexander said, surprising himself. "She does need to lighten up. My whole family does." As they walked back to his car, Ellie slipped her hand into his, a gesture that had become natural over the past weeks. "Why is she so obsessed with you marrying the right kind of woman, anyway?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "My father had an affair," he finally said. "With someone beneath our station, as my mother put it. It nearly destroyed her. She's convinced that marrying within our social circle is the only way to ensure stability." "That's sad," Ellie said softly. "To think love is determined by social status." "Do you believe in love?" Alexander asked, curious about her perspective.